All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, How Coursera Saved 2,000 plus hours on data entry using Zapier. I know you probably have a lot of things you could be doing with your time, and we really appreciate you spending it with us here. Also, I love to see that we have people joining us from all over the world. I also have been told that my video is a little delayed, so I'm going to pop off my video just to see if that helps at all really quickly. So my name's Katie, and I'll be moderating today's event. Before we get started, I just wanted to go over a few housekeeping items. So first of all, this webinar will be recorded, and you'll get an email with the recording afterwards. And next, all attendees are muted, but if you do have questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. If you put them in the if you put your questions in the chat box, it'll probably get lost just due to the sheer volume of people on the call. So be sure to type those in the Q&A box, and we'll have Lori on the line from our support team try her best to get to those during the webinar. And if not, we'll have time at the end of the webinar for Ian, Lori, and JT to answer some questions live. There will also be a survey at the end of the webinar, and we'd love if you could fill it out and give us any feedback you might have so we can improve future events. Okay, let's get started. So I'd like to introduce our speakers today. First, we have JT Haskell, who has worked for Zapier for over 2 years. He is the director of recruiting, where he leads Zapier's global hiring efforts. And this year, he actually has worked with our product team to help further develop the Zapier for Teams and companies plans for our customers. We also have Ian Murray joining us, and Ian is an enterprise implementation manager at Coursera. He owns the delivery of the Coursera enterprise product to new customers, from technical implementation, change management, and deployment to customers' learners. He works with cross-functional teams at Coursera to build and automate processes by providing technical solutions for company initiatives, and he enjoys nothing more than spending 29 minutes automating a 30-minute manual task so he never has to do it again, which I personally love. All right, so for those of you unfamiliar with Zapier or Coursera, I just want to give you a brief overview of both. So what is Zapier? Zapier is a tool that actually allows you to connect your favorite web apps to each other and move information between them automatically. So this pretty much allows you to forget busy work and focus on what really matters in your job. You can actually connect apps like MailChimp, Gmail, Slack, or Salesforce. And since we work with more than 2,000 apps, there's a pretty good chance you'll be able to find an app that you do use every day, which is pretty cool. And next we have Coursera. Coursera was founded with a vision of providing life-transforming learning experiences to anyone, anywhere. They are a leading online learning platform for higher education, where 66 million learners from around the world come to learn skills of the future. More than 200 of the world's top universities and industry educators partner with Coursera to offer courses, specializations, certificates, and degree programs. And 2,800 companies trust Coursera's enterprise platform for business to transform their talent. Coursera for Government equips government employees and citizens with in-demand skills to build a competitive workforce. And Coursera for Campus empowers any university to offer high-quality, job-relevant online education for their campus. We're really excited to have Ian here today. All right, so remember, you can ask all the questions you want to our speakers in the Q&A box, and either Lori will answer those live, or we'll get to those at the end of the session. And with that, I am going to let JT and Ian take it away.
Hey, Katie. Hey, Ian, thanks for joining us. And hey, everybody around the world. It's pretty amazing watching the chat, seeing all the people joining us from everywhere, it seems. So thanks for coming and spending some time with us today. We really do appreciate it. Ian, thanks for spending some time with us as well. And I'd love to kick off and hear a little bit more about how long you've been with Coursera. And you don't have to go into as deep detail as Katie, but just generally what you're doing and what you're doing with Zapier in your role day to day.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, great to see the thread with so many different people from Canada, and I see a few more from Ireland as well. So it's great to have everybody on the call. But yeah, just about me and Coursera. Being at Coursera almost 1 year now, but a lot has happened in 1 year, and I think that's happened for everybody. But my role really at Coursera, I'm doing two main things. One is I work with our larger customers to roll out our enterprise product. So that's setting up the product, configuring it, rolling it out, doing change management. But then there's another large part of my role, which is really working with cross-functional teams to provide technical solutions for internal processes. So as everybody I think kind of knows right now, the ed tech space is booming and there's a lot of things we need to do to scale. And that's one of my core functions, is really to automate some of those processes, and Zapier is a big part of that.
Awesome. That's great to hear. So were you using Zapier prior to joining Coursera, just personally?
Yeah, so I was, prior to Zapier, I worked at actually another ed tech company as well, and it was similar. They were growing really, really quickly, so I had to figure out ways to scale my role. And at that time, we didn't actually have a Teams plan; it was more of a personal account. But I was using it for several different personal tasks. So one that I personally loved was, because I'm very much orientated with a project management mindset, was I'd parse emails as they're coming in. So as I'd start, I might create a Trello cards, so I could basically go to Trello and manage all of my to-do list. And then we also internally, we used basically a Salesforce and Slack integration to post close one notifications to the sales team. So we use it in several different ways prior to Coursera.
Are you the main user of Zapier at Coursera?
I wouldn't say I'm the main user, in the fact that there's so many different teams at Coursera using the platform. So we have our marketing team, we have our engineering team. But then when I joined, I brought it into the implementation side of things. We had some processes that were pretty manual that we needed to figure out really quickly. And based on what I'd used Zapier for before, I thought it was a perfect fit. And now we're using it in several different cross-functional initiatives.
Could you talk about those cross-functional ways Zapier is being leveraged across the company?
Yeah, so when I think about the other teams first, so to give context, for example, our product team, we have a smaller teams offering. So for smaller groups of learners who are purchasing a pack, we have a Slack notification. So when they purchase 5, 10, 15 licenses, for example, we have a notification to our Slack channel where all of our sales team get notified when these large corporations buy a smaller subset of licenses. So it's a great way to notify the sales team, but also these are possible upsells later. Then other examples, we've recently released a new authoring project, which has a lot of project management involved. And how we've done that is we use Zapier to integrate Google Forms with Jira. And that's really beneficial in the fact that we can generate a project pretty much instantly. So there's no manual tasking, going into Jira, setting up manual project tasks and working through those. And then in my team, it's probably one of the bigger cross-functional initiatives that we're running, and that's the Coursera for Campus initiative that we're working through.
Gotcha. So was the Teams plan was in place prior to you joining Coursera, is that right?
Yeah, so that was the funny part of it. So when I joined, I actually didn't know we had a Teams plan to start, and we had to figure out this large automation that we had to build in a very, very short time. And then we realized that other teams across the company were using, they were using it for different large automations. So one was a Salesforce integration, we were sending leads to Salesforce. The other was a Slack notification. And it was as seamless as, we need access to Zapier, can we get set up? They just added us into the Teams plan. We set up our own folder and started to build workflows pretty instantly. And now it's starting to spread a bit more across the business into other channels too.
That's great. So the big automation project that you had to take on, I heard that was kind of due to COVID and the spike in growth for you all. Could you walk through what were the challenges you were trying to solve with Zapier, and what was the outcome? How much time and effort were you able to save?
Of course. So to give context and background, back in March, when the pandemic was really starting to break out globally, the Coursera as a business decided to open up our content to learners globally. So any university in the world could sign up for Coursera Access. And what that basically was, when you get access, you have an administrative portal, you get set up with an account, and then you can invite your students. Then there's a lot of background processes to that. So if you want to think about it, an organization comes on, we have to set them up, we have to do all of the configuration in the back end, but then there's a huge part of actually tracking the information. So where do we put that data later? And when we launched it on March 12th. Coming in on Monday morning, we had almost 60,000 inquiries. So we realized doing the manual tasks that we had before wasn't really going to fit the need and the demand that we had. So in basically under 3 days, we built out an automation across our team. So we had some other tools where we scripted them with one of our integration partners, but then one of the larger parts was actually the tracking, which is always important to be able to track who's using the platform, how they're using it, and also having that information ready. And that was where Zapier really came in. So one of those launches, typically, if we were to do it manually, would take about 30 minutes. So we had some other tasks that automated some of the process, but then Zapier saved up to 10 minutes or so per launch. And it's about 12,000 launches in 3 months. So that's where you come up with a very, very large efficiency and saving. But really the integration was able to pass all of our tracking from all of those organizations set up straight into Salesforce instantly. And the real benefit of it was that part of the process was set up in a few minutes. So it was a 3-day project to build all of these like complex automations. We were able to use Zapier to basically implement one of the biggest time savers we've had in the 3-month period in minutes.
That's great. What were some of the other apps that you connected?
So in that scenario, it was Google Sheets to Salesforce. So we were able to post some of the tracking into Sheets, and then instantly Zapier would pick up new rows as we were adding them and sending them straight into Salesforce. That was the first workflow, and we realized that was the first time we really kind of, I would say, our implementations team started using Zapier in our flows. So now we've started to repurpose that, so we're able to post similar to Slack now, so notifications on some of those signups, but also for other initiatives. So we have our Coursera for Government initiative, which is reskilling workforces, and then we have our Coursera for employee resilience, which is similar again for companies around the world who are trying to offer resilience courses to their workers. And we were able to repurpose what we built for Zapier using the Google Sheets, using the Slack integration on Salesforce. We were able to repurpose that instantly without any rebuilding or without any dev work whatsoever, which was a huge benefit. The fact that the Salesforce APIs are quite tricky to understand to start with.
Gotcha. That sounds awesome. For coming from an individual plan to now joining a team's plan, just from an administrative perspective, like managing Zapier for yourself and now managing it for a team, what have you found to be the biggest benefits of the team's plan now that it is something that the entire team collaborates within? Yeah,
so the big thing for me is like it's the ability to switch between working in a silo but also working cross-functionally. Obviously, with the singular plan, I could go in and I could have some automation set up. But if I leave the company, the automations leave with me effectively. So what's one big benefit on the Teams plan is everybody has their own login, has their own account. So I can build some automations for my own personal workflows, but also the shared folders. So the implementation team has a folder, and the engineering team has a folder, and marketing has a folder. So we all have access to our own workflows, but we can cross-functionally work as well. And the fact that you can scale up and scale down really, really quickly with Zaps is a huge benefit, where on a personal plan, it's not just as easy. And that was one thing that we really needed, because it was a huge growth phase where we had to scale up our Zaps very, very quickly, but it was almost instantaneous, which was a huge benefit for us too.
With the access within Zapier for your Zaps, did you have concerns about, well, who would be able to see this? Who could manipulate the Zaps that I've built? And I guess, do you have concerns from a security perspective of joining a Teams plan?
That's the really beneficial part of the Teams plan, is that I most use the Google Drive analogies. If you share a folder with somebody, only people in that team have access to those apps. But then also the huge benefit of, which thank God nobody's left Coursera in the time that I'm there, because it's a pretty amazing place to work. But if somebody does leave, we have the comfort of knowing these automations are going to exist within that team after the fact. But also I know that there's other teams using Zapier at Coursera, and I don't know what they're even using it for, because they have their own siloed folder that's not shared with us, which is beneficial because that's probably information I don't need to see or don't need to know.
Gotcha. Have you been able to just share the automations you've built, however, through Zap sharing within the account?
Yeah, so the first big one, because obviously when we hit our first cap, that was when I really noticed how much we were using Zapier across the business, because I was pulling into an email thread with all of these different people asking, oh, how are you using Zapier and what are you using it for? And then the very first thing we did was we had kind of our channel process, which is different to all our freemium offers. And we're like, oh, if you're doing this for your freemium initiatives, can we repurpose this for our team as well? So we're able to take one Zap, share it, make slight config changes very quickly, but also share it within other teams. Now we're repurposing it and using it into different teams and different initiatives and share them really easily, versus trying to document how we did it in one system and then go and recreate it. It's just automatically moving it across different use cases.
Yeah, oh, it's so easy. Yeah. So to wrap this up, if you had somebody that was considering a Teams plan or is currently a Zapier user in an individual plan, considering a Teams plan, what would you say are the biggest benefits that you've experienced as to why you should join a Teams plan?
Well, first and foremost, the biggest thing for us was to be able to automate manual team tasks. And the fact that you don't have a central holder of an account, people can go in and be creative. So they can have their own personal account where they can create workflows and share those ideas with the team. So it gives them that ability to be creative. But also, when you're thinking about building an integration yourself and actually just using Zapier, that's a huge benefit. So for us, if we were to go build, like what we use Salesforce really heavily, we were to go build an integration that would take weeks, if not months of development effort, where with the Teams plan, we were able to just plug in all our basically favorite apps, because I haven't found one yet that doesn't integrate, and use them pretty much instantly, which is obviously hugely beneficial. It's a huge time saver, both on development effort, but also on actually the time to actually get set up. You can set up an integration in a matter of moments. The other big thing that was huge for us was ad hoc tasks. So, which was probably not a common use case for Zapier, where we had like certain data entry, like loads that we had to run, and we didn't have an easy way to do it. So we just used Zapier in several cases where we needed to move data from one place to another really, really quickly, and it does it instantly. That was the big part on the automation side. So if you are considering an integration and you're thinking of your tools, I haven't found one yet that we use personally that don't integrate with Zapier. But if you're thinking about what automations you need and should you build the integration or should you just use the platform, I'd have a look at the Zapier platform first. There's I think over 2,000 apps last time I checked. But that's one thing to look at. You're going to save so much time, both internally, but also you can focus on building your product and you can focus on building your other features rather than focusing on integrations. That's one thing. The other was obviously the team sharing. If you're looking at sharing workflows across teams and working as cross-functional initiatives of different parts, data needs to touch different parts of the business in different teams. Zapier can basically be embedded between different teams and you can share the information cross-functionally. So if you're thinking about that automation that we built for those initiatives, it starts with implementations, but then product get to see the information, then sales get to see the information, then marketing get to see the information and use it as they need. So it's basically touching every team in the business, but it's being used cross-functionally, and they can change it as they need as well if they need to add specific information or specific data points. Those are the two biggest ones, I suppose. And then the shared folders is just a huge benefit. It's the fact that I can get something set up. I can migrate from my personal account, really quickly move these apps into my corporate account, have them all set up, and then share them across the team.
Yeah, the migration onboarding is so easy. Found as well joining the Teams plan. So, well, great. Well, thank you so much for joining us and sharing how Coursera is leveraging Zapier. We're really excited to have you all as customers, and hopefully been a help for you during this great time of growth. And really just excited to see what you all continue to do with the platform in the future. So thanks a ton, Ian.
Thank you so much,
Katie. Yeah, absolutely. Katie, hand it back off to you for Q&A.
Great, thanks Ian, thanks JT. So I just want to recap really quick. I know that a lot of you probably have questions for Ian and we wanted to leave time for that. So I just want to recap a little bit, show you guys the Zaps that Ian is actually using and how you can actually use these exact Zaps at your organization just to save your team some time. So let's pop over to the next slide. So as Ian mentioned, one of the main Zaps they use at Coursera is adding leads to Salesforce from rows and Google Sheets. And that Zap in particular has saved them 2,000 plus manual hours. And as Ian said, initiatives at the company and enter in large amounts of data to Salesforce. So this is a great one if you really are trying to add a bunch of things into your CRM. So just a reminder, Zapier connects 2,000 plus Zaps. So chances of your CRM, if you don't use Salesforce included in those apps, is pretty high. but this app will just allow you to force or without needing an engineering team to help you set it up, which is pretty awesome. The second Zap Ian mentioned was, so for example, if your project Jira to manage tickets and projects, you can link a Google form that someone may fill out as a ticket. It will create a Jira issue or a ticket in the system. And this is a great this is great for project management teams and product teams, design teams, or even marketing teams that may be using Jira as their project management tool. And Zapier also integrates with Asana and a bunch of other different types of project management tools as well. So this last one is popular for the sales team at Coursera, but can be used for any team. So Coursera likes to send Slack notifications for new tasks in Salesforce. So for example, when a new customer upgrades, or let's say your team closes a new sale, it can be shown as a notification in Slack. So you can use Slack with many other apps that Zapier integrates with as well. I recommend checking out our site, www.zapier.com/apps, which we can actually link that in the Q&A, to find the different apps that we work with. There's 2,000 plus, so you can go and check out which ones may pertain to your job role, or you can go to zapier.com/roles, ROLES, and you can find your job role, which I think is really awesome. It's a search function, and you can see the different Zap templates that are commonly used for your role, and you can just plug and play those templates and create them yourself. It's pretty easy, and you can find all the different apps that might work for you. So as Ian mentioned, he was on the Zapier Teams plan at Coursera, so I wanted to run through some of the features of how you can use Zapier with your team and how you might be able to be more productive together. So first of all, Zapier for Teams allows everyone on a team to automate their day-to-day tasks so they can focus on what's important. It also allows teams to automate their processes to more efficiently access workflows with no limits on the workflows they can create. So some of our customers' favorite features, and as Ian already mentioned, is shared folders, which allows you to essentially collaborate and share access to Zaps with your entire team so you can all kind of work together on those workflows. And then unlimited Zaps is very popular because you can create 10, you can create 1,000, and the Zaps are just completely unlimited on the Teams plan, which a lot of our customers like. And then the enterprise ready security. So Zapier encrypts all information sent to or from your account and offers two-factor authentication for an extra layer of security. So that's really important to a lot of our customers. And just really quickly to wrap this up, reiterate what Ian said and JT talked about before we get into questions. So Coursera, essentially, as Ian said, they needed to scale their mass amounts of data. So they had a ton of data coming in due to the pandemic and needed a way to automate it into their CRM. So they decided to use Zapier to build essentially a more scalable data entry system into their CRM, which reduced time and effort on manual tasks and saved their team over 2,000 plus hours over 3 months, which we think is pretty awesome. And by automating these efforts, they were able to scale from 30 universities in their system to 10,000. And as Ian said, his job is kind of to determine how to automate more workflows, and Zapier has helped him build integrations that would have otherwise he'd have to build from scratch. So the goal of Zapier is essentially to save you time. So hopefully you'll be able to find some apps that you currently work with and some templates that you can currently integrate into your own job role. All right, so with that, I'd like to turn it over to question and answer from the audience. So just remember, we'll be sending the recording out after the webinar, along with a link to sign up for a demo of the Teams plan if you are interested in that. And if you have questions for Ian or JT right now, please type them in the question and answer box, and we'll hop over to get those answered right now. So let's see here. I'm just gonna go check these out. Okay, Ian, this is for you. How did you figure out your own use case? I'm having trouble figuring out how to know what I can do with Zapier.
Yeah, so the way I look at any task or any like problem that's I face really is think of it in a task flow or in a workflow scenario. And for that in the Zapier use case, because I had some initial experience where a friend had basically introduced me to it. But now when I'm looking at a workflow, I think of, okay, these are the things that we might have to build. These are things that there's probably existing automations for, and that's where Zapier really fits in. So if you think of all of your different tools that are needed in a workflow or in a problem that you're trying to figure out, it's pretty quick to go onto Zapier, search the different apps, and you'll see that there's a lot of tools that interact with each other automatically. And then you can think of the time to actually release a new workflow or a new process that's drastically speeded up by just embedding Zapier in part of that workflow and then building out the parts that you need.
Awesome. Were there any initial hesitations from others in the organization to use Zapier at Coursera?
Yeah, so with any, I suppose, enterprise SaaS company, it went through a pretty rigid security process with us before we actually started using the Teams plan. And that was the initial hesitation was our security team, but that's obviously first and foremost. They were more than happy, like they were pretty impressed actually by the setup at Zapier and how much readily available security information was available. That was one thing. The other was basically some hesitations of, are we automating too many tasks? And so far that hasn't been a problem.
Great. Okay. Let's see here. This might be good for JT or Lori. We recently had a few people who set up our Zaps leave. Is there a way we could use the team feature to bring those under one umbrella?
I would hand it off to Lori.
Yeah, sure. Yes, absolutely. In fact, the Teams plan is exactly what you would want for this specific use case. So by having the Teams plan, you can share Zaps amongst the team. And if one of the team members leaves, so one of your employees leave, any shared accounts and any shared Zaps with the team will actually revert to the team owner, as opposed to disappearing with your employee who leaves. And that will make sure that all the connections stay in place, your Zaps stay on. All of your Zaps are still available to the rest of the team, even though the person is not there anymore.
Okay. Lori, this is for you too.
Okay.
I want to strengthen my Zapier coding knowledge. Is there a channel, webpage, or somewhere where I can learn how to use Zapier better? I'm a current customer.
We have a bunch of places. So we have our Zapier 101 videos, which are on YouTube, which I actually posted the link in the chat. We have a number of things. Give me a minute and I'll throw some links in the chat as well to our getting started documentation, to some examples apps that you can build. Also, the support team is available. I mean, we are always happy to help. Write in, tell us your problem, tell us where you're running into trouble. We definitely can help you get pointed in the right direction.
Awesome. All right. And so here's another one. Is Zapier in use at the moment with this Zoom call? Any integration with the Q&A responses? So nothing with the Q&A responses, but yes, for the landing page signups to Zoom, to send out, we also use it to send out emails and webinar, basically to get webinar access information over to Google Sheets, and we can capture all of that information there. Okay, let's see. So Ian, this is for you, and I don't know if you know the answer, but I'm going to throw it out there. Could you please tell us how much Coursera is spending on Zapier per month? What budget is set for using Zapier within Coursera?
Good question. I'm not sure the exact pricing now, but I know that the huge benefit for us internally was the ability to scale up and scale down. So at one point we were using 1 million Zaps per month, and now we're back down to a lot lower. I think we're almost 200,000 now, but the big benefit is it's the pretty much standard Teams pricing, but we vary depending on demand. We spin it up and spin it down as needed, and that's, I suppose, a huge benefit of the Teams plan too.
Okay, awesome. Ian, what is the longest step Zap you built for Coursera? Did it include paths?
So the longest step was the first time we launched the larger workflow that we built to pass the data to Salesforce. That was it was an initial, and then what we did afterwards was we changed and we put in a lot more conditional checks. So checking the customer, checking the org, checking different parameters that were being passed through, and depending on those, we changed the information that we sent to different systems. So it was the conditional checks than the paths, but the conditional checks was the thing for us where we added a lot more conditions along the workflow to make sure that the right information is being sent to the right places.
Okay, great. Okay, here's a question for you, Ian. Is there a tool or is it just pen and paper that you use or have used for the design stages of a new integration? I seem to want to blueprint something before I start, but not sure if there is a tool that you could recommend.
Yeah, I used to use Microsoft Visio, and then when I joined Coursera, one of my colleagues, like Mike, he uses Lucidchart, and that's what I've been using since. I find Lucidchart is extremely flexible, and it's really easy, just very quickly jot out a workflow. In a lot of cases, you'll put a workflow together really quickly. Once you introduce me to that, I kind of never really look back. But yeah, Lucidchart is what I use pretty regularly.
Okay. So this might be a tough one unless you can think of something off the top of your head, but is there some use case or specific app you got stuck on that you can share how you resolved it?
I kind of get one off the top of my head that there's not one off the top of my head. I'm thinking right now is like we're working on another workflow right now, which is make maybe a Coursera app in future, and that's one that we're working on to resolve. Is as customers actually asking, are we integrating with Zapier? So that's, I suppose it's more worth figuring out that problem as the business is how we set up our app on Coursera or on Zapier. But I don't have an example that I can think of off the top of my head that I have built so far.
Okay. How about this? Have you built Zaps for personal use? If so, what have you built?
Yeah, the one that I mentioned earlier, which was a huge time saver for me, was based on certain emails. So if I starred an email in Gmail, I would create a Trello card from it. So it was basically a personal workflow of somebody would send me an email, and I used to just star my emails as a to-do list. But now what I do is I start an email, I pretty much ignore it. It goes onto my Trello board and it's on my to-do list. So that's really good. Just keep organized and keep my to-do list in check, because then you start getting messages from elsewhere. So it's just really good to keep all your project tasks in one place.
Okay, that's really awesome. I need to do that. I like that. Okay, here's another one. And this might be good for Ian and maybe you too, Lori, just because you've seen so many unique Zaps. But what's the most unique Zap you've seen built by an individual?
I can throw out for one of these because this is my favorite Zap that I built for a customer. The customer had a cabin in the woods in Vermont, and they lived like way far away from Vermont, and they wanted a way of not paying $1 million for their electric bill, but also making sure their pipes didn't freeze. So we created a Zap that actually checks the weather every day, and if it's below a certain temperature, we send a webhook to their Nest thermometer to bump up the heat, and then a few hours later we bump the heat back down, and then the next day it does it all over again. And the customer wrote in like a year later going, "This was amazing, it saved me so much money, I didn't have my pipes freeze, I didn't have a really high electric bill, this was awesome." That is one of my favorites. My other one is my personal one, which is my You're Awesome bot. And my You're Awesome bot runs randomly and just every once in a while pops in a little GIF into my Slack DMs that tells me how awesome I am. And it's just like that 2 seconds of make me feel good. So that's probably my favorite one.
Okay, those are both awesome. And I love the cabin one. I have heard that people are using Zapier for kind of everyday things, which I think is great. So thanks for sharing. Okay, let's see here. This is for you, Ian. Does Coursera have experience using webhooks? Interested to learn more about custom use cases.
Yeah, in our scenario, we didn't. We needed a poll course. We actually needed to poll Coursera for testing, but we didn't use webhooks. But more, we used a scheduler from Zapier to basically, I suppose if you want to call it a hack, a custom way to poll certain apps really easily is just use the Zapier scheduler. That's what we use as an alternative for orgs that didn't use webhooks.
Okay, great. Okay, let's see here. It looks like, I don't know if I understand the context of this question, but I'm going to throw it out there and maybe you might know this. One of you, Lori or Ian, how does your Google Sheet or Google Excel Zap handle high Zap volume? Does it perform well?
I know Lori might be able to answer this one better, but I know from like what we've built so far, like all the Zaps basically are active within 3 minutes of me adding information to the sheet. So it's been performing extremely well. It's fitted all of our use cases, but Laurie may have more ideas on the limitations if there are any, but I haven't come across them yet.
Yeah, really the only limitations with Google is, or with really any app, is their own API rate limits. So Google has a rate limit of, I want to say 100 calls per 100 seconds. So if you go over that, Google basically will just send back an error message that says, nope, that's too much. You're just going to have to hold up. We help deal with that by what we call task throttling. And so if you try to send too many things at the same time, we will stop anything that goes over our internal threshold, and then we'll send you an email saying, hey, you know what, you sent a lot of stuff to us. Are you sure you wanted all of those to happen? If so, go ahead and release them, maybe a little slower than having so many come at once. Otherwise, you can go ahead and delete them because you didn't mean for all of those to go through. But for the most part, I mean, this is what we do, right? We send information. We send a lot of information for a lot of people. So no matter the app, whether it's, you know, an app that 5 people use or it's an app that 5 million people use, like Google and Excel, you know, that's what we do. We make it happen.
Awesome. Okay, again for you, Lori. What is the process of Zapier working with certain apps? How is it initiated?
Oh, good question. I was literally just typing an answer too. So for the most part, apps build their own integration on Zapier. Building an integration on Zapier is free to do. You can build it. You can eventually get to global, which means it's available to everybody who is a Zapier customer. We have a whole process. We have, I'll grab the URL for that for our developer platform. So yeah, you basically build your integration, and we have a few things that are requirements that you need to do to make it available for everyone, and then it is available for everyone. If there's one you'd really like to see, definitely write into the support team, and we can add it to our internal wish list. But honestly, you probably have a lot. It would happen a lot faster if you actually just reached out to the app themselves and said, hey, you know, we really want a Zapier integration. Can you help make that happen?
Okay, great. And here's another one. If I have an app that is not currently listed in the Zapier list of apps, who or how can that app get set up with Zapier? Is this sorry, I'm just trying to read this. Yeah, that's the question. That's the end. Sorry, so let me repeat that. If I have an app that is not currently listed in the Zapier list of apps, who or how can that app get set up with Zapier? That might be for you, Lori.
Yeah, it's the same answer. Just, reach out and get it on our internal wish list, but honestly, it'll be happening a lot faster if you reach out to the app themselves. I just threw a couple of links into the chat box as well, how to get a new service added to Zapier, and also some alternatives for ways where we could connect to an app that doesn't necessarily have an integration on Zapier. Things like webhooks or the parser tool, or I'm thinking there's something, even Google Sheets. Like Google Sheets is honestly my favorite tool in my back pocket. It's a cure-all for a lot of things. So yeah, take a look at the blog post, and that'll give you some options to help, you know, connect to apps that we don't necessarily have an integration with.
Great.
I'd also say, just to
this
add,
is also,
I'm just going to add to Laurie, because it's something that I've done recently, is if it's a thing that the app isn't on Zapier and you have like some of the API credentials, it was really easy for me to just set up a custom app using the developer platform, and then just add that to the company account.
Great. Okay, Lori, for you, I think this is for you. Could somebody discuss the security and privacy protections that are built into Zapier? This person works for a law firm, so they do litigation and have a lot of personal database with about thousands of clients that might usefully get moved around using Zapier, but I'm concerned about privacy.
Sure. We actually have some great documentation on our website about our privacy and how we protect your data. Honestly, it's at the forefront of all of our minds pretty much all of the time. Is we want to make sure that your data is safe, that your connections are safe, all of your logins. So when you connect an app, we use bank level encryption to make sure that it's protected. We as Zapier staff do not have access to that. So we couldn't, go in, grab your connections, log into your accounts and do stuff like that. Is just not a thing that's going to happen. In terms of protecting your data, we have GDPR compliance, the California, I think it's CCP, option. Sorry, my brain just sort of, I'm just going to grab another link for our data privacy, which I can pop into the chat, which it looks like I've been putting a bunch of things in the chat and all of these are going to the wrong place. So I've got a lot
That's okay. I just copied some of them over, so I think this should be good.
Sorry about that. I didn't realize I'd switched to all panelists instead of everybody. Darn it. All right. Yeah. So that page there, the data privacy, which I just posted in the chat, is a really good place to start. And all of our details and privacy and how we manage your data are there.
Great. Okay. Looks like we have time for just a few more questions. So Lori, again for you, is there a limit of steps in one Zap?
There is, yeah. So right now we're sitting at about 1 trigger and 99 actions. Anything more than that, and honestly, just today's browsers are not able to handle it, and it's just the rest of the Zap doesn't load, and then you can't use it, which defeats the purpose of having that Zap. So yeah, 1 trigger, 99 actions.
Okay, great. Okay, and will this webinar be recorded? Yes, it will. So we will be sending out an email most likely tomorrow. So look out for that and you will get the recording. You'll also get a link to sign up if you'd like a demo of our Teams plan. And we'll also include some of our Zap. Just click on those and easily use them. And again, check out our website where you can see all of our other Zap templates and check on your roles and see what common Zaps are being used for your particular job role. And with that, I'd like to thank JT and Ian and Lori for joining this webinar and all of your great insight. Thank you so much, everyone. And I hope all of you joining us today have a great rest of your Thursday, if it's Thursday where you are. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.